Hello everyone, welcome to Kelly's Art Throb. I'm Kelly, and today I'm going to be working in my sketchbook on some basic drawing skills. Now, I've been creating a lot of patterns in my drawings, and I've been very fascinated by knots. And I just happen to have some macrame window treatments in my kitchen. So I took a picture of just the knots, and I printed it out, and I'm going to trace it onto tracing paper. And before you give me a hard time and say, Kelly, you're going backwards, you're not supposed to be tracing anymore. You're supposed to be drawing from real life and not photographs. Okay, this is different, and I'll tell you why. These macrame knots, each cord goes in and around and loops through the other cords, and they make this fabric. And I feel like if I want to render this convincingly in a piece of finished artwork, I really need to understand how each cord fits with all the other cords. So I printed this out and I just started randomly tracing. And I thought about it and I thought, no, that's not going to work. Then you really are just tracing. What I did then, I went and I followed each cord throughout the rest of it and just traced one cord at a time. Wherever it went, traced its path, and by the end of it, I have a lot more muscle memory and some neural pathways to help me, and then I'll be able to freehand it in my sketchbook. The first sketch is simply to trace it with a Micron pen directly on the photograph. That just helps me get an idea of, it's just like a run through. I have done a fair amount of tracing in my day, so I have kind of a system for keeping the paper from shifting around underneath the tracing paper. I put the photograph face down on top of the tracing paper, and the tracing paper has to be a little bit larger than the photograph at least. And then I tape the photograph to the tracing paper. Now, since I'm recording, I'm then going to turn it over and tape the tracing paper to the table. I knew that after having traced this without tracing paper directly on the photograph with a Micron, that it was going to be easier the second time, and it really was. The muscle memory was already beginning to kick in, and the logic of how each cord wrapped around the next just made it that much easier. Here's the final pencil tracing on tracing paper. What I found out is there are 4 cords to each repeat, so I took 4 different colors of colored pencil and I traced the path for each cord in a different color. And in the end, you can see that it's kind of a color-coded repeat. This is where it gets a little trickier because, of course, I'm not going to be tracing it this time. I'm just using what I learned while I traced it to put it in the sketchbook. However, I am going to give myself a little bit of a grid so that I can space the knots. And I counted the number of knots in the columns and rows and then just marked them in the sketchbook and then drew lines to make the grid.
I heard you say you found the story all tucked away in the back of the room, been lost for years, far away from the glory, in the midst of our day-to-day routine, in the corner of our minds. We're not in gloom, we're not in mourning, to erase the truth. It takes more than will. Among the things I like to do, crazy
It gets easier to refine the flow of direction each chord moves as I go along. Everything is connected, so it's a little like putting a puzzle together. The more pieces that are placed, the quicker and easier it gets to finish. It looks a little tedious, but it actually was pretty relaxing and meditative, and there was just enough of a challenge when I needed to work out the flow to keep my interest. This is when I get to bring the drawing to a satisfying close, the inking. Now, putting in some detail of fibers or washing in with watercolor were both possibilities, but I'm going to freehand this drawing again on the facing page, and I'll probably do both of those on that one. So I'll leave this particular drawing alone once it's inked. And there's not much more to say about it, so let's just listen to some music while I do ink it. Well, now it's done. Thank you so much for spending time with me today, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.